This happened a while ago when I moved into my own place for the first time. My parents had lent me money for a place, so I decided to move into a duplex type house by myself. Anyway, after about a month of living there, I had gotten settled in and became quite friendly with my neighbours. One morning I went to the mailbox to get bills and stuff, and I noticed that someone had broken it open. The metal lock on the back looked like it was shimmered off or something. I looked inside and mail was there, but it was all opened and put back in their ripped envelopes. At the time I didn't think much of it, and I was just pissed off. Jump forward a few days, and it's early in the morning. I had got up and was about to go to work. I opened my door to walk to my car and realised I had forgotten my tablet. I walked back inside, leaving my front door wide open. I walked back to the front door to see a man in a hoodie standing outside my door. I dropped my stuff and let out a little squealing sound. I was more surprised than scared. He was outside my door at this point. All I could think of was to say, "Hi." He didn't say anything. I picked up my stuff and walked towards the door to speak to him, when I saw he was holding a black flip knife in his hand. I screamed as loud as I could and ran into my house, not looking back. I ran to the bathroom directly down the main hall of the house and locked myself in. I curled up on the floor and listened. I could hear him walking down my hallway. I just continued to scream as loud as I could. Here is the great thing about living in a duplex. My neighbours were a married couple in their early 60s who, at the time, were sitting down for breakfast. I didn't know at the time, but the husband was an ex-police officer. Awesome. I'll switch over to what happened through the eyes of my neighbour from what I heard and what they tell me. I'll call the ex-cop Bill. Bill and his wife were eating breakfast when they faintly heard me scream the first time when I saw him at my door. When I started screaming at the top of my lungs, Bill obviously thought something was wrong. He stuffed his gun under his belt just in case. You can see the bathroom from my front door, and remember that the front door is wide open. Bill arrived at my front door to see the guy with the knife in his hand and his face pressed up against the bathroom door. Bill draws his gun and screams, "I don't know who the fuck you are, but drop the fucking knife right now." I hear this through the door and I immediately feel a sense of relief, but also adrenaline. Now, this is where I say that I tell you, until you've heard gunshots in a confined space, you do not realise how loud they are. Apparently, the guy didn't take the hint from Bill and ran at him with the knife. 3 deafening shots rang out. "Stay in there for the time being." I recognised the voice immediately as Bill's. I was never more relieved in my life. Long story short, Bill got 3 near perfect shots on the guy's shoulder, enough to stop him in his tracks. The police came within minutes and took the guy away in an ambulance. Apparently, he had been watching my house ever since I moved in and was a prior sex offender. So, if it was not for my neighbours, I probably wouldn't be writing this right now. This story is a little bit different in the sense that it's not based on one specific event, but rather a continuous set of events in a specific town in Belgium. So, here it goes. I used to live in a small provincial town up until I was 18. From the outside, it seems like a cozy, quiet town where nothing ever happens, but it has a creepy, dark undertow. I got out of there when I was 18 and never looked back. I have lived in several big cities since then, and nothing as creepy has ever happened to me since. This is a collection of stories that happened to me there in the 80s and 90s. When I was around 8, I started music lessons after school, and to get there I had to cross a big park. In winter it would be dark and I never felt safe. I have no idea why my parents thought it was a good plan to let me cross the park alone in the dark. One time, I found a severed paw. It looked like a dog or a wolf paw with long straggly hair on it. It seemed to be ripped off some animal with brutal force. Another time I found an animal's eyeball, just a single eyeball, no blood or other parts nearby. It weirded me out as a kid, and that's because we don't really have that many wild animals here except for some rabbits and a rare fox. But there's probably a logical explanation. When I was 10 and my brother 8, we were playing in this little stream in the park. We had just learnt about the environment and we were cleaning up the trash from the stream. We found a package wrapped in plastic buried under the mud of the stream. We were so excited to have found treasure. We unpacked it and inside was a leather pouch with 2 huge Rambo knives inside with serrated edges. We were quite happy with our treasure and ran inside to proudly show our dad. He almost had a heart attack and immediately called the police. He did the same that one time we came running in happily telling him about the man that showed and rubbed his penis while we were playing in the park. We were very naive kids. After that, we couldn't play in the park anymore if we weren't in a big group. Once, when I was 13, I was walking on the street in broad daylight. A young man of about 25 came up to me and asked me if I had the time. I looked at my watch and he just grabbed my breast like it was no big deal. I was stunned and just ran home. He had a strange look in his eyes, like no one was home. Another time, a jeep with tinted windows would follow me and my female friends. One time the guy talked to us and tried to get us in his car, saying things like he would get us weed or candy or alcohol, trying different things. We were not so naive anymore then and just laughed at him. He followed us off and on that entire summer. Another car stopped right by my side one night, cornering me, threw open the passenger side window and a man yelled at me to get in. I backed off in the other direction and they yelled one more time and then sped off. One night, I was going home after a party and another car followed me very slowly, always keeping up with me. I started to take alleyways to get rid of it, but it just kept slowly but surely following me with its lights off. It was like something from a horror movie. I panicked and ran into another alley and hid in someone's backyard, inside a bush. The car crept up and stalled in front of this bush and put his big lights on. I was shaking and so sure they saw me and that I was going to die. They never got out of the car, just waited for about 10 minutes with their lights on and then drove away. Another time, I was walking home in the evening. A guy started following me. It wasn't that late, but after 8 in winter and everything in this town is closed and everyone is inside, completely deserted. First, I wasn't sure he was following me and I took a complicated way home, but he kept up with me all the way. We were near the park and I had to cross and I started to panic because there was no one around. He then started yelling at me, asking how much for sex, how much for anal. I was just 14. There was nowhere to hide and we were passing the last houses. He started running at me. I ran back to the houses and started knocking on doors and windows in my panic, trying to alert someone. No one responded, but luckily it at least scared off the man and he left. I hid for a while to see if he was coming back and then I ran home. A while later, in my last year there, a girl from my school and her friend disappeared. It later turned out that they were snatched by Mark Dutroux. I'm not saying my experiences had anything to do with him, just that there was a concentration of creepy shit in this cozy, seemingly safe town where nothing ever happens. Oh, and in case you're wondering who Mark Dutroux is, well, he's a Belgian serial killer and child molester convicted of having kidnapped, tortured and sexually abused 6 girls from 1995 to 96, ranging in age from 8 to 19, 4 of whom he murdered. So, I was walking like 15 blocks to the police station to report the robbery of my document. I was still very paranoid because I had been mugged the week before, so I was really aware of my surroundings. I knew the neighbourhood pretty much by heart because my ex-boyfriend lives there. All of a sudden, I get this tingly feeling when I see an old man sitting in the curb, just there, He must be, well, I would say 60 years old. So I felt kinda guilty to be judging him for what had happened to me on the days prior. I have always been really perceptive about this kind of things, and I was getting this really bad vibe about this old man, but I didn't want to make him feel bad, and I felt secure because it was like 11 o'clock in the afternoon, so I kept on walking on that side of the street instead of just crossing it, like I felt I had to do. When I'm maybe 5 meters away, he just hails for a cab. And that's when I grew more suspicious about him, because we were on the insides of a neighborhood where cabs usually didn't come by so easily. I keep going with my head up, just trying to look as least scared as I could, while I was terrified. The cab stops, and he opens the door just when I'm getting really close to where he is standing. When I go right by him, he grabs my arm and starts to tell me to get in. I say no thank you and try to keep walking, but he has my arm grabbed really tight. The man in the cab doesn't look surprised at all, so every red flag lights on in my head. I start screaming, knowing that I'm in a really small neighborhood where everybody knows everybody and they really look out for each other. The man lets go of my arm and I start running. I get to a very busy intersection when I run into a female cop. She sees me very distressed and she asks me if anything is wrong. I just explode crying because I feel so relieved. I was so scared. I sincerely felt that they could be following me. Next thing I know, I'm in a police car and I'm getting right to the police station. I tell them everything I remember. I'm pretty much in shock. I felt something wrong that whole day. I even asked my friends to join me because I didn't want to go home alone. I even called my mum to ask her if she could drop me off by the next day because I was really scared. When everything calmed down, sometime later I was talking to a really young cop and he told me that this was happening a lot. Like girls being forced into cabs and just disappearing. He recommended that I carry a knife with me at all times instead of a mace. This happened about 4 years ago. At the time I was around 8 months pregnant and was doing some Christmas shopping at the local mall. It was around 9 at night. I finished up my shopping and headed out of the mall towards my truck. At this mall there is a road that goes around the mall and parking's on the other side of this road. Therefore you have to cross the road to get to the parking area. As I am leaving the store, I happened to notice a man standing in the middle of the road. He looked in my direction and made eye contact. I looked away and kept going. At this same time, there are 2 men that walk past him to go into the mall. He never looks at them or says anything to them, but kept his eyes on me. I noticed that he started to walk in my direction, but I just keep on strolling to my vehicle. Then I hear, "Excuse me, can you help me?" Being Southern has its own downfalls, and one of those is having it ingrained into you to be polite. I simply just asked, "What do you need?" He looked around and said, "Could you help me start my car? I think my battery's dead." I may be Southern, but I'm not that polite, nor am I stupid. Please remember that I am very much pregnant and a woman walking alone in a parking lot. If he was really having car trouble, is it likely that he would ask a pregnant woman for help, rather than the 2 men that had just walked past him? Doubtful. At this point I knew it's time to go, so I just say, "Sorry, I can't help," and keep on walking. A little faster this time. I still see him out of the corner of my eye following me. I have my keys out and I'm ready to go as soon as I make it to the truck. He's still coming. "You really can't help me? I just need a jump." Again I say, "Nope, sorry." Finally, I get to the truck, unlock it and jump in. He is practically running towards me now. I lock the doors and try to get the key in the ignition, but I was shaking and at that moment the damn key just would not fit into the ignition. He gets to the truck and hits my window, saying, "I just need your help for a minute." Now I'm starting to get angry and yell, "No, get the hell away from me." He grabs a door handle and tries to open my door and screams, "Just open the door." Here is where I lost my cool and made a split-second decision. I have my concealed carry license because there have been other reasons that I needed protection that I will not go into here. However, I did have a .38 special in my console that I do know how to use. When he tried to open my door, my only thought was to protect my child and myself. I rolled the window down, grabbed the .38 and pointed it right in his face and said, "I'm not going to tell you again. Get the fuck away from me." He stood there for a moment, in shock, I am sure. In that moment, time stopped. I didn't know what he would do, but I knew that I was prepared to use this gun if he made any move toward me. He didn't. He didn't say a word. He turned and ran. I know I should have gotten the hell out of Dodge then, but I just couldn't. All I could do was just sit there in shock. I was terrified of not only what he may have done to me had I not felt that something was wrong, but also that I just threatened to kill someone. Not a situation I ever want to be in again. However, should it happen, I still have that .38 and it's loaded and ready to go.